My name is Olivia Parker. I'm a 32-year-old art curator based in Boston, and for years, my younger sister, Meline, and I shared everything. We were practically inseparable until the day I discovered my name was missing from her wedding guest list. "It's just a small gathering," my mother remarked casually, as if that simple phrase could erase the shock of being excluded from one of the most significant moments in my sister's life. Instead, I spontaneously booked a solo trip to Iceland, never anticipating that their meticulously planned celebration would unravel quite so dramatically. As I stood mesmerized beneath the swirling northern lights, surrounded by glaciers and volcanoes, my phone began buzzing with increasingly frantic calls. Before I delve into the emotional whirlwind that followed, if you've ever felt overlooked by your own family, please share your experience in the comments below and consider subscribing. You'll want to hear how I ultimately found my voice amidst the stunning landscapes of fire and ice. Despite a 5-year age difference, Meline and I grew up like best friends in our suburban Massachusetts home. We had matching bedrooms and a private language only we understood. As the older sister, I naturally took on the role of protector, shielding her from the less than perfect dynamics within our family. Our father was consumed by his accounting career, seldom home before 9, while our mother channeled her drive for perfection into cultivating an impeccable family image, often directing most of her attention towards Meline. Perhaps it was her status as the youngest, with her golden curls and infectious laugh. But Meline quickly became the undeniable star of our family. Growing up, I didn't mind much. I adored my little sister and felt immense pride watching her excel in dance recitals and school plays, always cheering from the sidelines with my disposable camera in hand. Our connection seemed to deepen throughout high school. Even as I prepared for college, I helped Meline with everything from tricky math problems to navigating teenage romance, and she looked up to me as if I possessed all the answers. When it was time for me to leave for NYU, 12-year-old Meline wept for days, extracting a promise that I would call every night and visit monthly. I kept those promises, dedicating most of my weekends and holidays to being with her, often foregoing opportunities to build college friendships or join study groups. After graduating, I returned to Boston, partly to be nearer my family, especially Meline, who was entering her senior year of high school. The pattern of making sacrifices continued almost unconsciously. I helped her meticulously craft her college applications, editing essays late into the night, despite my own exhaustion from launching my museum career. When she received a partial scholarship to Columbia, I secretly supplemented her tuition from my entry-level salary because our parents claimed they couldn't cover the rest. Throughout her college years, I served as her primary emotional anchor, fielding panic-stricken calls during final exams and rushing to New York when her first serious boyfriend broke her heart. My apartment became her preferred weekend retreat whenever the intensity of city life felt overwhelming. When Meline met Ryan during her final semester, I patiently listened to endless details about their dates and offered my analysis of his text messages. Ryan came from a background of significant wealth, the kind our family had always circled but never truly entered. His father owned a successful investment firm with political connections our parents could only aspire to. I was genuinely thrilled when they got engaged just 8 months after her graduation. Seeing her so happy, despite my private reservations about the speed of their romance, made me eager to support her. Wedding planning commenced immediately, with my apartment quickly becoming the unofficial command center during those initial weeks. We spent evenings surrounded by glossy bridal magazines, comparing invitation samples and sharing champagne-fueled dreams of her perfect day. "You'll be my maid of honor, obviously. I couldn't possibly do this without you," Meline declared one evening, her diamond engagement ring catching the light as she squeezed my hand. In that moment, I felt that familiar comfort of being needed, of our supposedly unbreakable sisterly bond. However, subtle shifts began to occur as Meline spent more time with Ryan's social circle, sophisticated women from elite prep schools who spent summers in the Hamptons and winters in Aspen. She started canceling our regular dinners, Her texts became less frequent, and when we did meet, she seemed distant, constantly checking her phone. I noticed her adopting new expressions, subtly altering her style of dress, even adjusting her laugh to sound more reserved. I tried to convince myself this was just a normal part of her evolving life. But deep down, watching her transform into someone I barely recognized felt like losing a part of myself. The first significant blow arrived 3 months into the planning process, when Meline requested to meet for coffee to discuss something important. I arrived early, ordering her favorite caramel latte, assuming we'd be finalizing venue choices or discussing wedding colors. Instead, she nervously informed me that Ryan's sister, Veronica, would be her maid of honor. His family is contributing more financially to the wedding, she explained, avoiding my gaze. It's really more of a political decision than anything else. The words felt like a physical impact, but I managed to mask my pain with a smile. Of course, I understand. I'd love to be a bridesmaid instead, I offered, though the demotion from my promised role stung more deeply than I wanted to reveal. Meline seemed visibly relieved by my easy acceptance, quickly diverting the conversation to her upcoming dress fitting, promising to send photos. Those photos never arrived. In fact, details about the wedding became increasingly scarce. I learned about the chosen venue from our mother, rather than Meline directly. When I texted congratulations, her response was a brief thanks, without any further information. One Saturday morning, I called to confirm our regular brunch plans, only for Meline to answer amidst a chorus of female voices. "Oh, Liv, I can't make it today. We're actually bridesmaid dress shopping." The pronoun we clearly didn't include me. "But I thought you said that wasn't happening until next month," I managed to reply, recalling our previous conversation. "Plans changed. Veronica found this amazing boutique with a cancellation. I meant to tell you," she responded, the impatient voices in the background growing louder. After hanging up, I spent the day creating Pinterest boards, filled with bridesmaid dress options, in the burgundy color scheme she'd mentioned weeks earlier. I researched venues similar to hers, compiling a list of photographers known for capturing that particular ambiance. My attempts to remain involved persisted, despite the widening chasm between us. I sent thoughtful texts inquiring about wedding progress, offered to help address invitations, and even suggested handling the wedding website, leveraging my experience with similar projects at work. Most of these efforts went unanswered or received curt, dismissive replies, like "already handled," or "Veronica's cousin is doing that." The true gut punch landed when I visited my parents' home and discovered my mother assisting Meline with a wedding planning WhatsApp group. While scrolling through her phone for another reason, I glimpsed the group chat titled Maddie's Dream Day, containing over 15 members, including our cousins and aunts. My name was conspicuously absent. "You're not in the group?" my mother asked, noticing my expression before quickly adding, "I'm sure it's just for the wedding party. Nothing important." That evening, I finally confronted Meline by phone, asking directly why I was being excluded from the wedding preparations. Her response left me utterly speechless. "You're making this all about you, Olivia. This is my wedding, not another opportunity for you to control everything." Control everything? When had I ever sought to control her? My life had been dedicated to supporting her dreams, not dictating them. But my protests were met with accusations of jealousy and self-centeredness, culminating in Meline abruptly hanging up. The weeks that followed brought more painful realizations. My mother began making pointed comments about my appearance whenever wedding discussions arose. "You might want to start that diet now if you want to look good in the photos." Or, "Have you considered highlights? Your natural color might clash with the bridesmaids' dresses." Each comment reinforced the feeling that I wasn't measuring up to some unspoken standard for my sister's perfectly curated day. Despite the growing knot of anxiety in my stomach, whenever the wedding was mentioned, I continued trying. I sent Meline articles about meaningful sister traditions, offered to host a bridal shower, and even suggested assisting with honeymoon planning, given my recent experience coordinating a museum tour through the Italian regions they planned to visit. Each attempt was met with increasing coldness, as if my very effort to stay connected had become an unwelcome intrusion. By the time spring arrived, 6 months before the October wedding, I felt like I was desperately clinging to a relationship that had already slipped through my fingers. The complete exclusion solidified on a rainy Tuesday evening, during what should have been a routine family dinner at my parents' house. Meline arrived late with wedding invitation samples, spreading them across the dining table after our mother had cleared the plates. The ornate ivory and gold cards featured intricate calligraphy and custom illustrations of the Boston Public Garden, where Ryan had proposed. As everyone admired the designs, I reached for one to examine the details more closely. That's when my mother gently withdrew the sample from my hand, saying, "These are just for reference, dear. We need to finalize the guest count first." Something in her tone made my stomach sink. "When do you need my guest information?" I asked, assuming I'd be allowed a +1, even though I wasn't currently seeing anyone. The awkward silence that followed filled the room like a toxic gas. My father suddenly became intensely focused on his coffee cup, avoiding eye contact. Meline exchanged a quick glance with our mother before clearing her throat. "Actually, Liv, we're keeping the wedding really small," she said, her voice unnaturally bright. "Just immediate family and close friends." I stared at her, bewildered. "But I am immediate family. I'm your sister." My mother quickly intervened, her practiced social smile firmly in place. "What Meline means is that with venue restrictions and budget constraints, we've had to make some difficult decisions about the guest list." Budget constraints? With Ryan's family's wealth and my parents having depleted their savings to contribute? "So I'm not invited to my only sister's wedding?" I asked plainly, needing to hear the words articulated directly. Meline fidgeted with her engagement ring. "It's complicated, Olivia. The venue has strict capacity limits, and Ryan's family has business connections that need to be accommodated." The conversation rapidly deteriorated into circular explanations that never genuinely addressed the central, unbearable question: how could they possibly exclude me? I left that dinner in a daze, the full weight of the reality not completely settling in until several days later. I stopped by my parents' house to drop off a book my father had mentioned wanting to read. They weren't home, but using my spare key, I let myself in to leave the book on his desk. That's when I noticed the preliminary guest list, printed out and marked up with my mother's neat handwriting, lying on the kitchen counter. I knew I shouldn't look, but an irresistible compulsion drew me in. I scanned the names. The small, intimate wedding included over 200 guests. Ryan's distant cousins from Australia were flying in. My parents' golf friends from the country club made the cut. Even Meline's freshman year college roommate, with whom she hadn't spoken in years, was invited. Everyone, it seemed, except me. As I stood frozen in my parents' kitchen, I heard my mother's voice from the backyard. Through the window, I saw her on the phone, pacing beside her garden. "Yes, Sandra, the invitations go out next week. No, Olivia won't be attending." Between us, she would just draw attention away from Meline. You know how she is? Always has to be the center of attention, with her quirky outfits and strong opinions. This is Meline's special day. We need everything perfect. I slipped out before she could discover me, my hands trembling so violently I could barely drive. The final pieces of the puzzle fell into place over the following weeks. Through social media, I discovered a lavish bridal shower had been hosted at Ryan's mother's estate in Connecticut. Photos showed Meline surrounded by women in pastels, opening gifts and participating in wedding games. Our female cousins, aunts, and family friends were all there, celebrating, while I had remained completely unaware the event was even happening. My best friend, Taylor, outraged on my behalf, became my essential emotional support during this period. "This is beyond messed up, Liv," she declared during one of our emergency wine nights, after I showed her the bridal shower photos. "Family simply doesn't do this to each other." Encouraged by Taylor's indignation, I made one last attempt to understand by confronting Meline directly. I drove to her apartment unannounced, determined to have an honest conversation. Initially surprised to see me, she reluctantly invited me inside. The conversation began civilly but rapidly unraveled. I don't understand why you're making such a big deal about this, Meline said after I expressed how deeply hurt I felt. It's just one day. One day that symbolizes our family bond, I countered. One day I've helped you plan for months. One day we've talked about since we were kids, playing wedding with pillowcases on our heads. That was before you became so difficult, she replied, waving her hand dismissively. Difficult? How? By supporting you your entire life? See, this is exactly what I mean. You always bring up how much you've done for me, like I'm supposed to be eternally grateful. Maybe if you had a boyfriend or a better job, you'd understand the pressure I'm under to make this perfect. Her words sliced through me, revealing her true perspective. In her eyes, my single status and museum career made me somehow less worthy than her friends, with husbands and corporate positions. I left her apartment without any resolution, breaking down in my car before I even pulled out of her parking lot. Taylor found me there an hour later, still unable to drive, having called her in tears. This isn't just about a wedding invitation, she said, holding me while I sobbed. This is about your family prioritizing appearances over love, and it says everything about them, not you. 3 weeks before the wedding, my parents invited me to dinner at their house, an unusual request given the palpable tension between us. A flicker of hope ignited briefly. Perhaps they had reconsidered. Perhaps Meline had changed her mind. I arrived with a peace offering, a bottle of my father's favorite whiskey. The evening began pleasantly enough, with carefully navigated conversation about neutral topics: work, the weather, neighborhood developments. Then, as my mother served dessert, Meline arrived unexpectedly. My pulse quickened, recognizing the orchestrated nature of this family gathering. Olivia, my mother began, placing her hand over mine with practiced sympathy. We've been thinking about ways you could still be involved in the wedding. I waited, listening as she outlined their proposal. I could assist with setup the day before and clean up afterward. I could organize the guest book table and ensure elderly relatives found their seats. I wouldn't be included in any official photographs, of course, but I could be there in spirit. I stared at them, this family who seemed utterly blind to the humiliation they were offering. Let me understand, I said slowly. I'm not considered good enough to be a guest at my sister's wedding, but I'm suitable for unpaid help? Meline's face flushed with anger. This is exactly why you're not invited. You've always been jealous of me, and this is my special time. Not everything revolves around you, Olivia. Something fundamental broke inside me at that moment, a final thread snapping after years of relentless strain. Without another word, I stood, grabbed my purse, and walked out, ignoring my mother's calls for me to come back and be reasonable. That night, unable to sleep, I opened my laptop and began searching for flights, unsure where I was even looking to go. An advertisement for Iceland appeared, showcasing otherworldly landscapes of black sand beaches and ethereal blue glaciers. On impulse, I checked dates that coincided with the wedding weekend in October. The northern lights would be visible, the tourist crowds would be smaller than summer, and most importantly, it was literally an ocean away from my family's suffocating drama. By dawn, I had booked a 10-day solo trip to Iceland, complete with guided tours of ice caves, whale-watching expeditions, and a rental car for exploring remote coastal villages. The confirmation email in my inbox felt like the first genuine deep breath after months of feeling like I was drowning. The following weeks transformed into a different kind of preparation than I had ever anticipated for October. Instead of shopping for a bridesmaid dress or crafting a toast, I purchased waterproof hiking boots, thermal undergarments, and a professional-grade camera. I immersed myself in learning Icelandic phrases and local customs, downloading offline maps, and joining online forums for solo female travelers. Each step in the preparation process felt like reclaiming a piece of myself, actively building something new from the wreckage of my family relationships. When I informed my parents about the trip, their reaction was predictably self-centered. How could you abandon your sister during her wedding? My mother demanded, completely ignoring the fact that I had already been abandoned first. This childish stunt only proves Meline was right about you. My father, ever the conflict avoidant figure, simply inquired if I had purchased travel insurance, as if potential bad weather was a greater concern than the collapse of our family dynamic. Meline's response arrived via text. I heard about your dramatic vacation. I'd expect you to be mature enough to put your jealousy aside for my wedding, but I guess that was asking too much. I didn't respond, focusing instead on the practicalities of preparing for my adventure. Each day brought new details to arrange, new skills to acquire. I practiced photography techniques specifically for capturing the elusive northern lights. I studied Icelandic geology to better appreciate the volcanic landscapes I would soon witness. My apartment transformed from wedding central to expedition headquarters, travel guides replacing glossy bridal magazines. 5 days before my departure, my mother called in a panic. Apparently, the wedding coordinator was having disagreements with the venue manager. 2 bridesmaids were fighting over their dresses, and the floral arrangements might not precisely match the specific shade of burgundy Meline had insisted upon. We really need your organizational skills right now, she pleaded, speaking as if I hadn't been excluded from every previous planning session. Can't you just cancel your trip? Meline is completely overwhelmed with wedding emergencies. The irony was not lost on me. After months of making me feel entirely superfluous, they suddenly deem me essential, but only for crisis management. I'm sorry, but my flights are non-refundable, I replied calmly. I'm sure Veronica and the rest of the wedding party can handle it. The night before my flight, as I finalized my packing, my phone buzzed incessantly with texts from family members. My aunt questioned if I was really missing Meline's special day. My cousin suggested I stop being dramatic and think about someone else for once. And finally, Meline herself. Mom's freaking out and the wedding planner quit. If you cared at all about me, you'd step up. But I guess Iceland is more important than family. I turned my phone off, zipped my suitcase closed, and went to bed. The next morning, boarding my flight to Reykjavik, I felt a profound weight lifting from my shoulders for the first time in months. As the plane ascended, I pictured the chaos likely unfolding back home. But for once, I wasn't responsible for fixing it. Iceland greeted me with a surreal landscape that seemed purposefully designed to mend wounded souls. Stepping off the plane in Reykjavik, the crisp October air filled my lungs, carrying the faint scent of sulfur from nearby hot springs and an underlying freshness I had never encountered before. My small downtown hotel room offered views of colorful rooftops and distant mountains, a world away from the Boston suburbs and wedding venues I had escaped. After settling in, I ventured out to explore the city, immediately drawn to the distinctive architecture of Hallgrímskirkja Church and the friendly, ordinary bustle of locals going about their day, utterly uninterested in American family drama. That first evening, I joined a small Northern Lights tour, where our guide explained the science behind the aurora borealis as we waited in the darkness outside the city limits. When the green and purple lights finally appeared, dancing across the night sky like cosmic ballet dancers, tears streamed down my face. The sheer beauty transcended my expectations, making human conflicts seem incredibly petty by comparison. A Swedish photographer standing next to me, Astrid, noticed my emotion and quietly offered me tissues. First time seeing them? She asked gently. I nodded, unable to speak. Nature has a way of putting things in perspective, she continued. Whatever troubles followed you here will look different when you return home. Her words felt prophetic, though at the time, I couldn't fathom how my complex family situation could ever truly transform. After returning to my hotel that night, I briefly turned on my phone to check emails, only to be bombarded with notifications. The first crisis had struck, massive flooding at the wedding venue due to unexpected autumn storms. The event space was underwater, and all weddings scheduled for the next month were being canceled. While my family scrambled desperately to find an alternative location, I turned my phone back off and drifted into a deep sleep beneath my thick Icelandic duvet. The next morning, I embarked on a tour of the Golden Circle, marveling at the powerful Gullfoss waterfall, where rainbows formed in the mist. Watching the Stroker geyser erupt every few minutes, with surprisingly reliable punctuality, and walking between the tectonic plates at Thingvellir National Park. Our small tour group included a retired Canadian professor named Thomas, who shared fascinating geological insights, and a honeymooning couple who, ironically, seemed more interested in hearing about my solo adventure than discussing their recent wedding. At Thingvellir, Thomas explained how the land was literally being pulled apart as the North American and Eurasian plates drifted away from each other. Sometimes, he said philosophically, separation creates something beautiful and new. I couldn't help but wonder if the growing distance between my sister and me might eventually create something worthwhile too. Checking my phone that evening, I discovered the wedding had secured a new venue, a historic library downtown, at 3 times the original cost. However, this small victory was quickly overshadowed by news that all the bridesmaid dresses had arrived in the wrong sizes and an unexpected shade of purple rather than burgundy, with no time for replacements. The following day took me to the black sand beaches of Reynisfjara, where massive basalt columns form natural cathedral-like structures, and powerful waves crashed against mysterious sea stacks. According to local legend, the rocks were once trolls caught by the sunrise while attempting to drag a ship to shore. I found Astrid there, professional camera in hand, capturing the otherworldly landscape. Recognizing me from the Northern Lights tour, she offered to teach me proper camera techniques. We spent hours photographing birds, nesting in the cliff faces, and the hypnotic patterns of waves receding through the volcanic sand. When I checked my messages that evening, I learned the wedding caterer had canceled last minute, after discovering Meline had also booked a backup caterer, just in case, deeply insulting the original chef. The replacement caterer was now demanding double their fee due to the last-minute nature of the event. Day 4 brought me to the Jökulsárlón Glacier Lagoon, where massive blue icebergs calved from a retreating glacier floated serenely toward the ocean. The stark juxtaposition of ancient ice against black volcanic sand created a landscape so surreal it felt like visiting another planet. I joined a guided ice cave tour beneath Vatnajökull Glacier, where our group donned crampons and helmets to explore chambers of compressed blue ice formed over thousands of years. Inside the glacier, our guide explained how these caves were ephemeral, constantly changing and eventually disappearing as the ice melted each year, only to form new caves the following winter. Nothing lasts forever, he said, his voice echoing in the crystalline chamber. Not even something as solid as ice. That night, my phone revealed that the wedding coordinator had finally quit after a heated argument with my mother about table arrangements, leaving no one to oversee vendors or the timeline. Simultaneously, social media was buzzing with a viral video of Meline having a very public meltdown at her rehearsal dinner, reportedly throwing a centerpiece at a waiter who had served the wrong appetizer. The wedding was still 48 hours away, and disaster seemed to be snowballing. On my 5th day, I drove my rental car along the stunning southern coast, stopping at hidden hot springs where I soaked in naturally heated water while snowflakes gently fell around me. Later, I met an Icelandic family who invited me to their farm for coffee and homemade skyr, treating me with the warm, uncomplicated hospitality I had been craving from my own family. The grandfather, hearing fragments of my story, shared an Icelandic proverb. It is when the ice breaks that it makes the most noise. The wisdom resonated deeply, suggesting that sometimes relationships must fracture completely before genuine rebuilding can occur. My voicemail that evening contained my mother's first genuinely apologetic message. Olivia, everything is falling apart. We should have valued your organizational skills instead of, well, please call if you can. The realization struck me then. All these months, my worth to them had seemingly been measured solely by what I could provide, what services I could render. My absence was only problematic now that they actually needed my help. That night, standing alone on a rocky outcropping, watching the northern lights ripple across the vast sky, I finally felt the full weight of my family's conditional love, but also the surprising lightness that came with releasing my desperate need for their approval. The day before the wedding, I was preparing for a glacier hiking expedition when my phone rang with my father's number. Normally, he texted rather than called, so the unusual contact method immediately caught my attention. Stepping away from the tour group into a quiet corner of the hotel lobby, I answered. "Olivia," he said, his voice ragged with exhaustion. "I know you're upset with us, and you have every right to be, but things have completely fallen apart here." The desperation in his tone was unprecedented from my typically stoic father. He detailed the cascading disasters. The replacement venue's electrical system had failed during the final walkthrough. Meline had fired 2 makeup artists in succession. The photographer was threatening to walk after being screamed at. And Ryan's parents were now suggesting postponing the entire event. Most surprisingly, he admitted something I had never heard from him before. "We took you for granted," he said quietly. "You've always been the one who holds everything together, who solves the problems without complaint. Without you here, we're finally realizing how much we've depended on you without ever acknowledging it." His words should have felt validating, but instead, they landed with a hollow ring. Years of being the family fixer, only appreciated in crisis, had created a pattern I was finally breaking by standing atop a glacier, thousands of miles away. While we were still on the call, Meline grabbed the phone from him. "Liv," she sobbed, her voice barely recognizable. "I've been horrible to you. I got so caught up in everything, trying to impress Ryan's family and friends. I wanted this perfect wedding so badly that I completely lost sight of what actually matters. Please help me save my wedding. I'll do anything." The plea triggered my habitual response pattern. Drop everything, rush to fix the situation, put my own needs last. I felt the familiar tug of obligation, the guilt rising like a tide. But something fundamental had shifted within me during my Icelandic solitude. I remembered Astrid's words about perspective, Thomas's geological insights about separation creating something new, and the Icelandic grandfather's proverb about breaking ice. "I can't come home," I said finally, surprising even myself with the firmness in my voice. "I'm in the middle of nowhere Iceland, and my tour leaves in 20 minutes. But more importantly, I need this time for myself." Both Meline and my father began talking simultaneously, their panic escalating until I interrupted them. "I didn't say I wouldn't help," I clarified. "I said I'm not coming home." After ending the call, I approached Klus, our tour guide, who had been leading my excursions for the past several days. Over breakfast, I had shared bits of my family situation, and he had offered glimpses into his own experiences with family obligations in Icelandic culture. "My family crisis is peaking," I explained. "Can I speak with you for a few minutes before we leave?" His weathered face creased with kindness as he nodded, leading me to a quiet table in the hotel restaurant. I explained the situation briefly, feeling the intense pull between my newfound boundaries and genuine concern for my sister. Klaus listened thoughtfully. "We have a saying, Eid," he began. "Do not do to others what you do not want others to do to you. Your family excluded you when they did not need you. Now they want to include you only because they need something from you." He paused, stirring his coffee. "But the question is not what they deserve from you, but what kind of person you want to be, regardless of their actions." His words resonated deeply. Despite everything, I didn't want my sister's wedding to collapse entirely, but I also absolutely refused to abandon my journey and the healing process I had begun. The answer came to me with surprising clarity. I could offer remote assistance without sacrificing my essential need for this time and space. For the next hour, before our glacier hike departed, I worked frantically from my hotel lobby. First, I created a comprehensive emergency vendor contact list, recalling details from Meline's original planning documents, and emailed it to my father. Next, I called Taylor, who worked in event planning, asking her to coach one of the more level-headed bridesmaids through coordination duties via video call. I directed my father with a detailed script for negotiating with the venue about expedited electrical repairs, leveraging my knowledge of his business background. Through my museum contacts in Boston, I located a replacement caterer willing to take on the last-minute event, connecting them directly with Ryan's credit card information. Between these interventions, I drafted a minute-by-minute timeline for the wedding day, identifying potential problem points and offering preventative solutions. When our tour group finally departed, I had done everything humanly possible from afar, without compromising my hard-won boundaries. The glacier hike proved to be one of the most challenging and rewarding experiences of my life. Strapped into crampons and wielding an ice axe, I navigated crevasses and intricate ice formations, while our guide shared stories of explorers who had both perished and survived in Iceland's unforgiving landscapes. The intense physical exertion cleared my mind, and standing atop the massive ice field, gazing across the volcanic landscape to the distant ocean, I felt a profound sense of my own capability and resilience. That evening, exhausted but exhilarated, I discovered the wedding preparations had largely stabilized thanks to my remote interventions. Through Taylor's updates and scattered social media posts from distant acquaintances, I watched snippets of the ceremony unfold from my hotel room while preparing for the next day's hike to an active volcanic crater. The contradictory emotions were intense. Sadness at missing this significant family day, relief at having avoided the relentless drama, pride in my ability to provide assistance despite everything, and a growing conviction that my Iceland journey represented something far more meaningful than simple escape. I fell asleep that night, feeling conflicted, yet somehow more whole than I had felt in months, perhaps even years. Returning to Boston after 10 transformative days in Iceland felt like stepping into a parallel universe where my physical appearance was the same, but I was fundamentally altered inside. My apartment, once filled with wedding plans and sister-related memories, now displayed souvenirs from my journey. A small lava rock, photographs of geysers and glaciers, Icelandic chocolate, and a handcrafted wool sweater. My first family encounter occurred at the subdued post-wedding brunch my parents had organized at their home. Walking through the door carrying a simple houseplant as a neutral gift, I felt the palpable weight of accumulated tension and unresolved emotions. Conversations halted momentarily as everyone registered my presence. My mother approached first, her expression a complicated mixture of relief, lingering resentment, and uncertainty. "You look different," she said, studying my face, more peaceful. Before I could respond, Meline emerged from the kitchen and crossed the room with uncharacteristic hesitation. The awkward silence that enveloped us was finally broken when she spoke. "I owe you an apology," she announced, loud enough for everyone present to hear. "What I did was unforgivable, excluding you from my wedding when you've always been there for me. Even after everything, you still helped save the day from another continent. I've been a terrible sister." Her public acknowledgement surprised me, especially with Ryan's family present. My mother quickly jumped in with her typical deflection. "We didn't realize how much we needed you," she offered, somehow managing to make her statement sound simultaneously apologetic and accusatory. "The wedding would have been a complete disaster without your last-minute help." My father, standing slightly apart from the group, simply nodded and quietly added, "I should have stood up for you from the beginning." The brunch progressed with strained politeness until guests gradually departed, leaving just our immediate family. In the living room, where we had shared countless family discussions, we finally addressed the unspoken issues. I spoke honestly about years of feeling undervalued, of being treated primarily as the family support system without receiving reciprocal consideration. Meline admitted how easily she had been influenced by Ryan's family's social expectations and her own insecurities about measuring up to their standards. "I convinced myself that a perfect wedding was more important than our relationship," she confessed, tears forming. "Watching everything fall apart until you stepped in showed me how wrong I was." My parents had more difficulty acknowledging their roles. My mother was particularly resistant to examining her favoritism. Yet, even she couldn't deny the evidence of her actions when confronted directly. I never meant to make you feel less important, she insisted, though her examples of equal treatment fell conspicuously flat. My father, in his quiet way, simply stated, "We failed you. I failed you by never speaking up." As tensions eased, I shared my Iceland photos, each image telling the story of my personal journey alongside the physical one. The blue ice caves represented the beauty I discovered in solitude. The black sand beaches showed the stark contrast between expectations and reality. The northern lights captured moments of transcendent clarity amidst darkness. Without needing direct words, the photos communicated what I had found: strength and purpose independent of family validation. Meline's interest in my adventure seemed genuine, as she asked thoughtful questions about Icelandic culture and landscapes. She confessed that despite achieving her perfect wedding after the last-minute rescues, the experience felt hollow without me there. "I kept looking for you all day," she admitted. "Every time something went right, I wanted to share it with you. Every time something went wrong, I expected you to appear and fix it. It wasn't until you were gone that I finally realized our relationship was more important than any wedding." Setting new boundaries proved challenging, but absolutely necessary. I explained that moving forward, I needed our relationship to be founded on mutual respect, rather than one-sided support. I would no longer be available for emotional rescues without reciprocity, nor would I continue accepting last-minute demands disguised as emergencies. Surprisingly, these boundaries were met with less resistance than I had anticipated. Perhaps my absence had tangibly demonstrated what they stood to lose. The Iceland experience catalyzed other significant life changes as well. I accepted a curatorial position at a smaller, more innovative museum that truly valued my creative vision, leaving the prestigious but stifling institution where I had spent years trying to prove my worth. I moved from my cramped apartment to a light-filled space overlooking the harbor, decorating with Icelandic-inspired simplicity. I established clearer standards for all my relationships, romantic and otherwise, refusing to accept connections that didn't foster mutual growth. My reconnection with Meline progressed slowly, built on these new, more equal terms. Our first one-on-one coffee after my return was awkward but honest. We gradually rebuilt trust through consistent small actions, rather than grand promises or dramatic apologies. She made genuine efforts to show interest in my life and career, while I allowed myself to engage with her without automatically defaulting to a caretaker role. My mother's progress came more slowly, her ingrained patterns requiring conscious, persistent effort to change. She still occasionally slipped into old habits of comparison or dismissal, but now I calmly pointed these out, rather than silently accepting them. The healing process continued through therapy and self-care practices I had discovered the importance of in Iceland. The crisis had forced me to confront painful truths about family dynamics I had normalized for decades. The most profound lesson wasn't about weddings, travel, or even family obligations, but about self-worth, existing entirely independently from others' validation. In the vast Icelandic wilderness, surrounded by geological wonders that had existed for millennia, I discovered that my value wasn't determined by how useful I was to others. As I built my new life on this foundation, I often reflected on the irony that by escaping to Iceland and letting my sister's wedding threaten to fall apart, I had actually helped everyone, including myself, piece together something far more authentic than the perfect day they had originally envisioned. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between family expectations and personal boundaries? I'd truly love to hear your stories in the comments below. If my journey of self-discovery resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more real-life experiences. And if you know someone struggling with challenging family relationships or considering a solo adventure as a path to healing, please share this video with them. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is step away, even when everyone tells us to show up. Thank you for listening to my story. And always remember that your worth isn't measured by how much you sacrifice for others, but by how truthfully you live your own life.